Good to see everybody. It's been a while. Know you guys have been working hard, and we've actually had a dead period for the last month for the first time ever, so it's a unique time for us. It hurt us in recruiting because we couldn't have young guys at basketball games in February, and that's something that we've really used a lot. We had a junior day for every basketball game on a weekend. So from our standpoint, we would have rather been able to work February, but it did give the coaches a break so they can visit with some other people and get ready for spring practice. So I want to address a number of things that have come up since we've talked last. We've had two coaching changes. Scott Boone and I weren't on the same page and everything with our special teams, and he decided to leave, so we added Javon DeWitt, and I'll talk about Javon in a second. Tim Brewster and I had worked together 14 years, and Tim did a tremendous job for us, and he left to go to Florida, and want to wish Tim the best of luck. He did a great job here last year for us, as he's done for me when we've worked together in the past, and I hate to see him leave, but also you want what's best for somebody else anytime they want to change. I left here once, and people weren't very happy when I left, but it was best for me at that time. So you always want what's best for somebody else. But I want to thank Scott and Tim for the hard work that they gave us last year, and then we were able to get two really good coaches to come in as well. Javon DeWitt will talk to you some today, along with Coach John Lilly. Just to touch on a few things, a few reasons why we hired Javon DeWitt. 21-year coaching veteran. He's been 9 years as a defensive coordinator. So I think he can really help our defensive staff because he worked 2 years with Coach Bateman at Army. He knows this defense. He knows Coach Bateman. He knows what we're looking for. And he, Jay, and the other three guys should really be able to just start in spring like it's the second year, and Javon not have a learning curve since he's known this defense before, and he's been a coordinator. He's coached 11 years with linebackers. He had one guy that had the most sacks in 13 seasons at Nebraska that he coached. A guy with most tackles for loss in the last 4 seasons at Nebraska. So we've been trying to get better pass rush, and we feel like that's something that he can help us with. Also, he's 7 years experience as a special teams coordinator, and we've got to get better in our special teams. To be a team in the middle of the league, the way you get better faster is be the best special teams team in the league and hopefully in the country. So 7 combined punts and kickoff returns for touchdowns in the last 4 years. So we need to start blocking some kicks, and we'd like to score on special teams. That's important. Blocked 4 punts over the last 2 years at Nebraska. His units combined for blocked 7 kicks in his 2 seasons at Army. Kickoff return unit was ranked 4th nationally at UCF, and his punt return unit was ranked 6th nationally at UCF. Kickoff returner was ranked 3rd nationally at UCF, and with Michael Carter and Daz Newsome, we feel like that those guys have a chance to be as good as anybody in the country in the NFL or in the return game, and will help them with their stock for the NFL. Also, Javon's coached over 20 athletes that are in the NFL. So he not only knows who to recruit, but he develops them well and puts them forward. Coach John Lilly, we were really lucky with Javon DeWitt because Coach Bateman knew him well, and we actually talked to him last year, and he had a bout with cancer and is cleared and really worked hard to get himself back on track. With John Lilly, he had worked with Coach Searles at Georgia, and when they were with Coach Richt. And John actually called here and said he would be really interested the day that Coach Brewster left. And then you start looking at John, and John's a 27-year veteran. He's produced multiple top 5 classes as a recruiting coordinator when he was a recruiting coordinator at Florida State. He's actually from this state, went to Guilford College, or not from here, he's from West Virginia, but he went to Guilford College and was a high school coach in this state before he went to Florida State. and then worked himself into the recruiting coordinator's position and also the tight end coach. And he is recruited in the ACC and the SEC because he left Florida State to go to Georgia. He's recruited North Carolina. He's recruited Georgia. He's recruited Florida, so it fits our footprint in recruiting. He's been a recruiting coordinator, so obviously he's very, very good at it. He's recruited guys like Roquan Smith, Butkus Award winner, Antonio Cromartie, Myron Roll, Ernie Sims, Orson Charles, Jordan Jenkins, and then even from North Carolina, Nick Maddox, who we recruited, that was a great back in this state, Everett Brown, and Lamont Gillard. So the guy knows what he's doing from a recruiting standpoint. He obviously coached great tight ends both at Florida State and at Georgia. He was a part of a national championship team at Florida State and got close at Georgia. He's coached in 9 New Year's Six Bowls. He spent the last 2 jobs in the NFL with the Browns, where his tight ends had the 4th most TD receptions in the NFL, and he guided the Rams tight end Lance Kendricks to a career high 50 receptions. And 2 of the NFL guys, Orson Charles and Arthur Lynch, tight ends he coached at Georgia, went to the NFL. So both of these guys are very impressive. They fit who we are. They were the only 2 people that I talked to specifically, and we feel like they're perfect fits for us. So one of the things I told the players, when you start looking around at coaching changes, there's a lot of coaching changes every year across the country, and that they should never worry about their coach leaving, because if they really like their coach, me and the University of North Carolina hired that coach. So we're going to go find you another one that's just as good, that you like just as much. So don't worry about it. Just you keep working to be the best you can be, and we'll get you a coach that's going to help you get your goals. So really excited about Javon and John being here, and you will talk to both of them here in a few minutes. Right now we're in the off season where we're basically overhauling everything and go back and review who we are and what we did the first year and what we liked and what we're concerned about that needs to be fixed. And we moved spring practice back 2 weeks because Coach Hess wanted 2 more weeks with them in the weight room and in the running and agilities. And I wasn't for it at first, but he didn't feel like in his first year he was able to get enough strength improvement, and he wanted the 2 more weeks of consecutive work, and so that's why we moved our spring practice back. I've talked to him a lot about the early enrollees. We have the 13 guys that came in early. A few significant weight changes are Kendrick Binkley Jones is at 293 now. I think it was 270 something when he came in. John Copenhaver was like 208 or something. He's 225. So they're getting stronger and bigger quickly. And Cameron Rose Sinclair, he's up to 201. So he's gained 9 pounds. Binkley Jones gained 18, and Copenhaver gained 10. So he was 215, I guess, instead of 225. I've also asked Coach Hess about who just has really stood out for you with those early guys, and he said Kendrick Bingley Jones, Josh Downs, and DJ Jones have really caught his eye as far as work ethic and quickness and ability, and overall DJ Jones is at 198 pounds. And they've been very, very impressed with his speed and his quickness. I asked him about the early enrollees as a group, in his opinion, because they really have them for this 6 weeks. He said they were all easy to coach. They're a great group of athletes, unbelievable athleticism. Strength levels are very good, which is a compliment to their high school coaches, and they're very competitive in team running. So we've been able to move them in with the older guys and getting them ready for spring practice. I also asked him just to give me some names for you all of people that have stood out from our current team in the off-season work. And De'Ami Brown, Easy, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, Tamon Fox, Tamari Fox, Trey Morrison, Kyler McMurray, and Kristen Varner. And they're talking a lot about Kristen Varner, that he's improved his quickness. And that he's very competitive and he's gained some weight. So they've been very, very impressed with him. As I start looking at depth charts, one of the most important things that we want to do is we've got to get a better two deep. We had some injuries last year. It really hurt us. We weren't able to replace the guys that got hurt as quickly. So the number one goal this spring will be to try to get a two deep where there's not much drop off when you take one group out and put another group in, and that is key for us. You'll have fresher teams. You'll have better team morale. You'll be in a position where you're less likely to get guys hurt because they're not in the fourth quarter tired, and we should be winning more of those tight games in the fourth quarter with better two deep than we had. A few key position changes or looks at our depth chart. We're going to start out the first day of spring practice with Awesome Richards as left tackle. So he will move over. Ty Murray and Jonathan Adorno will be the centers behind Brian Anderson. And Adorno's at 300 pounds now, and we know he can play any of the 5 spots up top. But Jonathan has been snapping in the player-led practices, and they said he's doing a good job. You start looking at the early enrollees. Right now, Kendall Carr is still working off of his knee and had a little setback with a hamstring, so hopefully he'll be well and ready to go by the time we get back from spring break at tight end. You've got Tylee Kraft and Stephen Gosnell that they said are doing a good job as they're taller receivers outside. Everybody's been impressed with Josh Downs and his quickness. And in the spring, we'll look at Josh Henderson and DJ Jones a lot more at running back than we will Javonte and Michael Carter because we know what they can do. So spring will be to improve the really good players that we've got to try to get them to the great level, and but really to start developing that depth with younger players and let them have a heavy load in the spring. Kristen Varner is up now to he was 6'3", 294, so he's right in the 300-pound area as a defensive end, defensive tackle. So we're excited about him. We'll also be looking hard at Kevin Hester. Kevin's 6'4", 283 as a freshman, and he'll be up front as one of the down linemen. And when you have a young guy like Jaleel Taylor that gets hurt in the bowl game and will miss the physical part of spring, what it does now is Jaleel's had a lot of work. It'll give these younger guys a chance to compete and play, and we'll get to know a whole lot more about them. And then you've got Ethan West and Ced Gray that'll be jumping in there at linebacker some, and probably the most excited position to watch this spring is going to be secondary, because spring and fall, when you add the guys that we've added, it's going to be really competitive back there, and guys are going to have to fight to get a chance to play. We are looking at Welton Spotsville at nickelback as well, because he's played offense. He can go back there easily, but the defensive guys want to take a shot at looking at him because he played some safety in high school as well. But spring will be fun. Last year we were trying to find enough guys to get on the field. This year we will actually have enough guys to compete that it should be great. And then when you add these guys in the middle of June, Caden Baker, A.J. Beatty, Jefferson Boaz, Jaden Chalmers, Jaquarius Conley, Desmond Evans, Elijah Green, Malik McGowan, Miles Murphy, Clyde Pender, Ray Rose, and Kamen Rucker, we become a better team the day those guys show up. And then that adds to your depth that you have to look at in the early season, preseason, because you get them all summer and get to work those guys hard. And I'll answer questions about any of this stuff when we get through. But the things that we want to improve, number one for spring is depth. That's the most important thing for this football team right now. People are talking about transfer portal across the country. If they're playing, they're not going to transfer, by and large. And you have better team morale. We said your It helps your recruiting because kids are happy, parents are happy, high school coaches are happy. So you need to play a lot of guys. And if you've got a lot of guys on your team that aren't talented enough to play or aren't trying hard enough to play, it really hurts you simply because they're not playing and they're unhappy. And usually if guys aren't playing, they're unhappy, they're blaming you. They're not going to blame themselves, and then it affects recruiting, it affects everything, and that's where the transfer portal has made it really easy for young guys to leave. Second thing we've got to do, and we will work harder on this than we ever have, is improve special teams. We'll have more depth, and therefore we'll have better players on special teams because we're going to give Javon pretty much his choice. Anybody that he wants on special teams, he's going to get. And I'll be the only one that can block them because we have got to get better in that area, and we're going to work really hard on it every day. Last year you were introducing punting, and there will be very similar things that we did last year that we'll do this year, some because of Coach Bateman. Then we've talked a lot about improving our red zone offense and defense, short yards and goal line red zone and red zone offense and defense, and those are areas that we'll work really hard on, but we'll work hard against each other. And we're going to have a lot more situational periods during practice where we just line up and go for two. And it affects both sides of the ball. So because the game is about kicking game and the game is about situations. So we need to improve those situations. And lastly, and every coach in America talks about it, we protected the ball well last year, which is probably why we had a winning season. But we need to continue to protect the ball, and we've got to get more takeaways. We didn't strip the ball enough. We didn't force enough interceptions, and we can do that by getting more pass rush. Our spring practice starts on March 17th. We'll be in shorts for the first 2 days, but because of NCAA rules. But we'll go on spring break. We'll come back. We'll have a conditioning day on the 16th to make sure that they acted right on spring break and that they're ready to go on Tuesday. Our practices will be designed like they were last year. We'll be practicing from 8 to 10 in the morning. We'll have our team meeting at 6:30, and that'll be every Tuesday and Thursday during spring practice. And then Saturday, most of the time, we'll start about 8 o'clock or about 10 o'clock, excuse me. So we'll practice from 10 to 12 on Saturday. Our clinic is March 27th and 28th, and we have Coach Jeff Munkin coming from Army. We have Coach Bill Clark coming from UAB, and we have Coach Matt Rule coming from the Panthers. So it should be a real good group for our high school coaches to be able to come and enjoy, and then we'll have probably Javon and Coach Lilly speaking on Saturday morning, but those guys will be speaking on Friday night. Then our spring game will be April the 18th at 3 o'clock. It'll be on ACC Network. We felt like that we really enhanced the game day experience last year, but we're going to take another huge step this year with some really cool things, and we'll continue to talk to you about it as we get into spring practice. But even though it's going to be on TV, we'll have a huge recruiting day that day, and we had the awful weather last year. We're hoping the weather will be a little better, but we'd love to have everybody come out and enjoy the experience of what we feel like game day will be like next fall. Recruiting right now, it's maybe the best year in the state of North Carolina for high school prospects I've ever seen. They're really good, and if we can get the guys to stay here, then we have another great class. But this class is a championship caliber class, and a class that can play with anybody in the country. And right now we have the interest of a whole lot of these guys, and feel like recruiting's going really, really well. Jeremy, did I miss anything?
I don't know, guys. Did you cover it all? Yes?
I'm out of practice. Shoot, I had to write some notes. Questions?
John Lilly's recruiting track record factor into you wanting to go on board?
Every coach that we hire needs to be able to aid us in recruiting. Recruiting's the lifeblood of a college football program. I've had average players on our team and we coached the heck out of them and had average teams. I've had great players. We probably coached them good and had great teams. So you have to be able to recruit, and you have to get the players. And you have to get enough of them that you can't have an injury change your season. And all of that goes into who you look at in coaching. I knew of John. I didn't know John, but when that name came up and he was interested because he was ready to get out of the NFL and get settled. He's got a 10-year-old daughter. He's got an 8-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. He wants to get settled. So wanting to be settled, going to college in this state, being a high school coach in this state, recruiting this state, being a great coach that the NFL wanted, which I can sell very easily in recruiting, and replacing a powerful figure in recruiting for us, I couldn't be more excited. And the fact that he called us, I wouldn't have thought we could have hired him. And he came down, we offered him a job, he took it, and it was done. I mean, it was a very easy process. And there's reasons, too. We would have talked to Javon last year, but he was sick. And then this year, his relationship with Jay, and Jay and Coach Monken knowing him and really liking him and feeling like he's a great coach, but also his mom and dad live in Myrtle Beach. So this gets him back on the East Coast. So we were lucky that our timing was good, that we could pull a longtime defensive coordinator and special teams coach back with the experience he got to coach our outside linebackers and special teams.
Did you reach out to any other tight end coaches, or was it pretty much just John Lilly and it just happened really quick?
No, John called me, or he called Stacy. Stacy came to me and said, "This guy's really good. I don't know if you're interested or not," and I said, "Yeah." And we sat there a little bit after that when HR will let you call, and we sat there, and in fact, the offensive staff had a conference call with him one afternoon, and you can tell he's a great recruiter and a coach. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. He's in Cleveland. It's snowing and cold, and he's got no babysitter and got nothing. And we say, "Can you get on a plane tomorrow and come down and visit?" And he says, "What time?" And the best flight we had left there at 6. So from 4:00 in the afternoon, they got a babysitter. They packed their stuff. They left the house at 4:30, and they were here at 7:30 for breakfast the next morning. So that shows you how coaches' lives are. He was very interested, and he came, and he and Coach Longo needed to hit it off, and they did. He sat with Phil probably 2.5 hours, 3, talking offense. He met with me and the other coaches. Phil was actually speaking in Dallas, so we had to wait till Sunday when Phil got back before he could talk to John, and I didn't want to hire anybody unless everybody had met them and made sure everybody was on the same page. And the offensive staff was 100%. I mean, they were all excited about him, and then it took us a week to get him here because of HR. And it was funny, as I was coming in to go to the scholarship dinner last night before the game, he was walking out with his family. They're already here looking for houses and getting ready to move. And he was taking the 8-year-old boy to the basketball game last night, and they were all decked in their Carolina stuff. So it moved very quickly.
What's his recruiting area in North Carolina and then regional?
Ross, it's a good question. We're re-looking at all of that stuff with Billy because he's very powerful in Georgia. He's very powerful in Florida, but he's got strength in North Carolina. So we've got to look and see. Tim's area was basically Raleigh and surrounding Chapel Hill here, obviously over to Lee County. And then Scott's was more in the mountains and up through Virginia and Northern Virginia. So we've got to look at where we feel like those guys can be best. More of Javon's has been South Florida. And we may recruit a couple of guys from South Florida. We're not going to be a South Florida place. So we've got to relook at him and see where he fits. And since all the guys have a North Carolina area, Billy and I are relooking at those areas right now. We don't have to do anything until they go back out in the spring, and that'll be in April. So we just need to be we need to get settled before then.
In particular about the special teams, did you have concerns with?
But you know, I thought we were okay, and in my position, you don't want to be okay in anything. And part of it was that we didn't have any depth, so we watered down. We had a lot of young people playing on special teams, and we'll be older next year and we'll be more experienced. But I've always felt like to be a great team, you've got to block some punts and you got to score some points. We weren't a factor on punt return at all last year. I think we had one for 15 yards, and that's it. And we had a great punt returner. Michael Carter had some really good kickoff returns, so that was much better. But I just feel like that we need to block more kicks. We need to return more punts. There's areas there that we can score, and I never felt like we were going to block a punt or return a punt. We weren't a factor. As a head coach, when the opposing team is getting ready, you're getting ready to punt, you should be afraid that they're either going to block it or that they can return it. And if you're not, they're not very good at special teams. And I never felt like we presented a fear factor for anybody in those areas.
Who do you expect or maybe anticipate stepping up into that special teams role like Antonio Williams did last season?
I think British Brooks right now is he was voted the outstanding special teams player by the team, and we actually thought it would be Antonio. So they really, really like what British does, and he's already been in to see Javon, so he's in a. But we'll meet. We'll have a team meeting today at 3, and we're going to tell all of them. Some of you are concerned about playing time and don't think you're getting enough playing time. Earn it, and if you're not being noticed, get noticed first on special teams, and if you get noticed on special teams, then we can trust you in other areas. But if you're not playing special teams, then we're wasting time with you right now.
What do you think about the proposed one-time transfer?
When you number one, I'm not sure I understand it completely. And Bubba and our team and our staff talked about likeness a month ago. I'm sure we'll talk about this. The thing I would say, Jonathan, and especially at my age and my experience, is that, and Bubba feels this way, Roy feels this way, we want whatever's best for the student athlete, period. I mean, the more money you can give them, the more space you can give them, the more freedom you can give them, good for them. And at the same time, you don't want the message to be that if I'm having trouble starting, I quit and transfer right quick. So that's the negative. The negative is that in the past, there were restrictions that wouldn't allow you to think about quitting. And now it's pretty easy to get out. And I think the second part of that is it changes the mentality of the head coach. And that's okay if it's best for the guys. But number one, roster management becomes tougher. You could have 3 running backs leave in June with a one-time transfer rule and not have any backs. And they could just decide to leave. Or if their coach now leaves, you could be tied to the coach and leave with him, and there would be basically no restrictions. So from a head coach's standpoint, you've got to look at management of your roster and how do you do that? How do you keep a lot of guys from being in the transfer portal? I think the way we do it is what we're all going to have to start doing. If you have an opportunity like us where you've got players around you, you're going to have to get guys that love your place. We're going to have to get guys that want a degree from the University of North Carolina so they won't readily just pick up and leave the first time they get mad. And I think the biggest part of that is our footprint from D.C. to Jacksonville, make it where parents can come and see the place and be around us. And it's the other reason that I'm passionate about depth. If they're playing, they're not going to leave near as quickly. But if not, and I've talked to coaches, and coaches are a little bit all over the place. Some say that, well, if they transfer once, then they can't grad transfer. I'm not into how many times they leave or where they're going, or I just think we'll just have to look at trying to make sure that the guys we get want to be here. Our coaches asked last fall, how do we keep guys out of the transfer portal? And I said, recruit the right ones. And that's harder when we took over Larry's program because we didn't recruit those guys. So some of them may not like us. The offense may be different. The defense may be enough different that they don't want to stay and fit in that group. But I told them, get guys that want to be here. Don't talk a guy into coming and then expect him to stay. And don't lie to him. If you tell him things that aren't true to get him to come, you're a liar and he's going to leave. So not only now do you have to think about who you recruit, but you got to think about who's going to stay and who's loyal to the place and wants to be here. And I think that's a huge part of this going forward.
Mack, how are you excited for starting the spring ball after last year when you hit the ground running and get a staff, and then you had spring practice in the season, and now how much ease going into the spring practice this year?
We're so much further ahead. I don't think I've ever been more excited about a spring practice than this one. You've got some young guys that were here that were redshirted or didn't play a lot, and you want to see them really be thrown into the mix. We've got a lot of guys back across the board. We probably lost more defensive linemen than anywhere else with two that played a whole lot they're really good players. So it's time to see who's going to step up, who's going to take that leadership role, and who's going to be the pass rusher that Strobridge was. And I can't wait till even fall to see our secondary. I'm so excited about those guys because we actually, during the Duke game last year, we had two corners, Greg Ross and Storm Duck. And that was it. That's all we had for the game. We moved DeAndre Hollins over to corner a little bit during practice so he could get a little work. And then the third play of the game, right in front of me, Storm Duck jumps up, comes down, hits his head, and he goes. And I said, no. No, we don't have any corners. So I run down to Jade. He said, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. And I hear him tell DeAndre Hollins, who kind of said, I got no clue. He said, you'll be on our sideline. Just we're going to play man. Just hang in there. Just hang in there. So at halftime, I go over to Jay, and I say, hey, what if one of those two gets hurt? And he said, that's a real problem. So we won't have that trouble anymore. We're going to have enough depth that we can coach. I remember Bryson Richardson last year. We had 4 defensive backs for the spring game, and we told all 4 of them, you cannot get hurt. I mean, you can't. We got to call off the game. And Bryson got up limping once. I remember Jay said, no, you got it. No. And he hung in there. So, but that will not be a problem this spring. We'll have enough players.
How much different are your meetings when you're planning, you're kind of projecting forward now that you kind of know a lot about what you're dealing with?
Yeah, last spring, we didn't know the players. We just knew that we'd lost. And we knew we had to get to know them, and we had to get them to trust us, and we had to gain respect both ways, and we had to learn to talk to each other. That's why we actually didn't even feel like we were there in the fall and started doing the tell your story stuff in our team meetings because we just weren't talking. Nobody talked to each other. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. And even on the bus headed down for the South Carolina game, it was so quiet. I thought they were all asleep. I wanted to get some spirit here, man. We got to go. And we're at a much different place right now. We know each other. They know what we expect. We know who they are. We know what we need to change. We know what we need to accomplish. We know what we're good at, and we know where we got to get better. So it's just a much more comfortable spot that we're in. And again, at 3 o'clock today, I'll talk to them. Our goals are different. Last year, we were trying to beat somebody. Last year, we were trying to finish games. Last year, we were trying to get to a bowl game. This year, we want to win the league. And there's a difference. And that's what we'll tell them today. The opportunities are there, but you got to earn it. You got to earn it.
When Gene Chiswick was here 5 years ago, he took an approach of kind of building a building block defense. First year, he said, you know what, this is what we're going to work on, learn it, and next year we'll add more. I know you add things each and every year. Do you take that kind of structured approach, or In other words, do you intend to really build upon both the offense and the defense in spring and fall camp? Or do you feel like you got most of that in year
No, we will be a similar mindset of Gene. What Jay did last year with our defense is what he could afford to do. I thought we were really good on defense up until Clemson. And then after that, we weren't good for a while because we lost all of our secondary. And then we got into a position where we either had to play man coverage and they just pull up and throw fades. I mean, that's all they were doing, period. 3rd and 15, we got this. Or we had to stay spread out and we couldn't stop the run. So we really weren't very good. And then we got Trey Morrison back. We got a little bit better at the end again. But Jay's got a lot of stuff in his pocket that we didn't use, that he'll want to use now. Offensively, I think the biggest thing that hurt us was when we lost Jace Ruder. And then we couldn't run Sam. And it really helped us in the bowl game. And we couldn't run Sam at all. And that hurts you in short yardage. It hurts you in goal line because you've taken one of your most valuable players out of the game with his legs, and you're not putting the pressure on the defense that you could, like we did on a 3rd and 4 against Temple for a 50-yard run or something. And I really feel like that will help us a lot in the short yardage and goal line woes that we had.
Last year, your team was good, but wasn't expected to be, a great team, underdogs in most matchups. This year, transitioning, there's a lot of high expectations, and preseason top 25, big honors for Sam, and a lot of returning guys. How do you kind of check those egos at the door and make sure they come out still fighting the way they did last year?
It's a great question. Number one, you want expectations, because if there's expectations, you've earned that right. And this team earned that right. We didn't have that right last year. People would say, can you beat South Carolina? I don't know. Can we beat anybody? I don't know. I don't know who we are. And then we had a freshman quarterback who'd never played a game in college starting the first game. We had 2 linebackers who'd never played in a game at linebacker. So, here I am throwing up in the corner before the South Carolina game, worried about who we are and who we're going to be. We know who we are now. So our offseason should be better than it was last year. We were learning last year. We should be competing to those standards now. And the same in spring practice. We're not going to be trying to have enough guys to line up. We're going to be competing to beat Central Florida in the opener on national TV. And that's the difference, I think, in the mindset. And with more high expectations, there becomes more responsibility. And you've got to do better. And you got to work harder. And you got to make more plays. And we'll have better players playing against better players this spring than we had last spring. So, therefore, they're going to be competing against really good players. If you take De'Ami Brown and Kyler McMichael, that's going to be fun to watch. And we'll try to pit the best ones against the best ones every day, so when they play another team, they play a Central Florida, they play an Auburn in those first 2 games, they will have practiced against those type guys every day.
What is the biggest challenge in year 2, in your experience? What have you seen has been the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge in year 2 is depth, in my estimation. If you think about it, standing here at this time last year, we had just gotten through recruiting, and we had a pretty good recruiting class to come in so late. Staff didn't even really know each other. I'd never worked a day on the field with Jay or Phil. And then we didn't know if we were going to have sellouts. We didn't know if we were going to have any crowds. We didn't know if we were going to win any games. So we were recruiting on hope last year and our expectation. We didn't know the players. They didn't know us. So, and we had so many injuries that it was hard to even go through spring. And if you got few injuries in spring, we didn't have enough at any position to make it, so we couldn't even hit very much. This year, all of those expectations have changed like we talked about, but we know who we are now, and we know what we've got to fix. So the depth the short yards and goal line, especially 2-point plays both ways, because that's such a big factor now when you go to 3 overtimes or 6. And the fact that we've got to develop better pass rushers, and that's on us. We've got to do that, and that'll be great seeing those battles this spring with our offensive line basically back intact against some really good young pass rushers that need to help us get there.
Well, I mean, not particularly with this team, but with teams, like when you take over a new program.
Good hands, good hands. That's
When you
it.
take over a new program, and year one, when kids see success, they're excited. But when year 2 happens and the expectations are different, what tends to be the biggest challenge for a coach in year 2?
Okay. I think the biggest thing is continuing to have urgency, continuing to be disciplined and grow as a team and get better, and not sit back on your laurels and think this is pretty cool. Everybody's bragging on us now. We don't have to work as hard. We kind of got our respect back. We got to start over. This team hadn't proved anything, and we talked about expectations. We talked about standard. Those are great, but last year's team earned the right to those expectations and standards, not you. And you all have to keep getting better. I think the hardest thing of being a head coach is every year is a different team. And every year the same expectation. You're supposed to win all the games. And every year you're supposed to recruit the best players. There are no breaks. There are no days off. And I think that's what got me a little bit after 31 straight years at Texas is you get tired if you're not careful. And the coaches laugh at me. I'm on them about, man, I need more energy, and you got to do this, and you got to do this, and come on, man, why didn't you do this? You're late. And they said, you didn't work for 5 years. You did TV for 4 months. We worked. So we're still tired. You're not. You got energy back. And there's some truth to that. My 5 years off really energized me, and I know I'm not going anywhere else. I know this is it for me. And I'm loving it, and I think that's a real advantage for us as well.
So how do you manage that with your coaches? When you know that there is wear and tear that comes with the job, how do you kind of manage that with them?
I did things like with the dead period, I gave them off every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I told them in February that you guys worked your tail off. You've recruited hard. You guys that started with me last year, guys, we started in November and haven't had days off. So plan with your family to go do something Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I don't want to see you at all. And I'll do that some more. I'll Good Friday, obviously, we're not going to practice, but they know they're off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Spring break, I said, I don't want to see you. Be gone. And that's why we're working so hard now to have everything prepared. So when we get back for spring break, we'll get back on Sunday. We'll work all day Monday, and we'll start spring practice Tuesday. But I have learned that you better be better at the end of the season than you are at the beginning. And if you're going to go to a bowl game, you got to have energy. And our staff was excited about the bowl. Our kids were excited about the bowl, and we played with a lot of energy. And that's my job, to make sure that we work as hard as we can, but we stay fresh.
Coach, I want to go back to the game day experience, and you said how much it benefited you guys last year during your first year. You guys are going to have the spring game on the ACC network, and you're talking about you wanting to bring more of that to your program. How important is it to elevate this program to where you want to take it when it comes to recruiting, branding, all that or whatever, when it comes to having events like that, ESPN Game Day, ACC Network, and all that? How important is that for what you want to do in your second step of the program?
We want to be the best in the country. And that's easy to say and hard to do. But if you're going to do that, you've got to do all of the things in your process that allow you to be the best in the country. And right now, Clemson is the best in our league. They're either best or second best in the country the last 4 or 5 years. So we have a target. We have a point that we know is right now that is considered the best. So that's what everything we do should be in order to be the best in our league. To be the best in our league would put us to be the best in the country. And we had great fan support last year. We need to enhance that experience even more, so people need to be coming to games to see us play, regardless of who we're playing, regardless of the weather, regardless of the time. They need to start planning weddings and wedding receptions around our games because it needs to be special in the fall. And the fact that a lot of people aren't going to their college football games anymore. They're not coming back on campus. It's easy to watch it on TV. We need to make it where they love coming to this campus in the fall. It is such an experience for them, and they're not going to miss it regardless of what happens. And they schedule a year in advance to make sure that this weekend is open so they can come and spend the weekend with their family. But because of that, too, I know that Bubba and Rick Steinbacher have talked a lot with Chris Del Conte at Texas. They've done a great job with their game day experience and having a street full of fans before the game with favorite restaurants in town, with like food trucks and bands, favorite bands around that people can come and listen to. So we're getting ready to take another huge step in the fall. It's going to be fun to watch.
And go back to keeping the coaches fresh throughout the season. How much did it help that you guys went early this past season? And I think you mentioned a couple of times that guys got a chance to get out at a fairly normal hour. And it's not just having time at home, but being able to see their family and have the semblance of normalcy that a lot of other people experience. How much did that help?
Yeah, Andrew, I think our morning practices have really been helpful as long as we're smart with it. Some nights we'd be over here till 9 o'clock, and you got here at 5:30. That's not smart. So if we're going to come, and we're going to continue to come because the players like it, we've got to make sure that they get in bed, especially around midterms. When they get tired, they stay up too late. Got to get up early, so we got to be smart. But as coaches, I've told our coaches, if you can't get here at 5:30 and leave at 5:30, then you're not doing your job. Be more organized. Don't be sitting around wasting time. I don't want our coaches over here wasting their time. And coaches traditionally, it's one of the few professions I've ever seen where they want to tell you how hard they work and how long they work. I thought, how stupid is that? The people that are really smart work hard, but they work less time, and they get more accomplished in less time. We're so stupid, man. I stayed over there 18 hours yesterday. Well, how dumb are you? I mean, you should have left after 10. 10 was enough because there is a point in time where you have diminishing returns. I used to say anything you decide after 10:30 will get you fired because you're also tired and you're mad and so it should be at 6:30 now. But I'm really working on our coaches to be so organized and work so hard and don't waste any time and go home at night with your families because coaches have never been able to do that. I didn't get to do it. And it's very difficult with your children and with your family. And I think it's a huge plus here. I told the coaches yesterday, we had about a 2-hour meeting, which is way long for us. I told them I want to have the staff that is the happiest staff in the country. I want them to have the most fun in the country. I want them to work the hardest and be the most well-coached team and the best recruiting staff in the country with the most free time. And I mean that. So we need to really look at being organized down to the minute. So work your rear end off, work really hard, enjoy each other, have a lot of fun with the players, bring in guys that you like and you can enjoy coaching, and go home at night. And I told them, I don't want you to tell me your defensive linemen look good. I want to see it. And I'm going to determine whether they coach well by watching video, not by hearing them talk. And I can't figure out how a guy that can get into the University of North Carolina and can pass here can't figure out which gap to go into. And I've told him that. Well, he's in the wrong gap. How does that happen? Man, there's 4 gaps. He can count to 4, and he's only responsible for 2 of them. Get him in the right gap. So, to me, football is simple. People are complicated. We got to make the people buy in, and we got to make the people compete their tail off, and we've got to make our coaches figure out, let's do things the players can do, and let's don't waste their time, and let's don't waste our time. And coaches put in way too much. We work on stuff we're never going to use, and it's stupid. Work on stuff you're going to use and get really good at it. And I want to be really good at a few things, not all over the place and say we're inventing new stuff all the time. Let's be good at something. And that's what spring practice is about. Ross.
A few personnel questions. Is Jay Streeter completely healthy and good to go for spring?
I've been told he will be by the time we go to spring.
Okay, because he had a recent surgery.
It did, and I think it was a tweak.
Okay.
But I saw him walking yesterday, and he's jogging. So they've told me that he'll be ready to go.
And then Austin Richard, you said he's starting at left tackle. You mean just that's a position change from right tackle, not
Yes.
like starting in first team?
Well, right now he'd be the first guy to walk out there.
Okay. And then Winston Massabro, I know he came in as a defensive player. Where is he right now? And where do you see him play?
We're going to play him on offense, and he's out for spring.
Okay. All right.
Okay. What else? Anything else
Anything
like
else
those?
procedural so we can get these assistants in here?
Yeah, you talked about the goal now is to win the league and you have all these high expectations. Have you seen any of the players take that charge as well and like rally the other guys?
The confidence and the attitude in the room now and in the workouts is so much better than it was this time last year, and that's all I can base it on. If you ask them the right questions, they're going to give you the right answers. So I don't ask them; I watch them, and they are practicing like they're on a different mission than they were this time last year.